Okay. Welcome to week 5, section 4. At some point it's really going to get confusing because we're going to have the spring break. That's going to become 2 off. So, are there any questions off the bat?
Yeah.
It's okay. Nobody can actually hear what you say because the microphone's not all that great.
I was driving myself crazy, and I know the answer is probably there, and I haven't had time to look at it yet, but for why I couldn't get the array, add something to the array at the beginning, was adding it to the end. What am I doing wrong?
There's 2 methods for adding things to arrays, one that'll add to the beginning, one that'll add to the end. Shift will add to the beginning, and push will add to the end.
I didn't even get that at all. I was doing something totally different. I was looking at W3 schools and trying to figure it out, but I'm not looking in the right place. I have to go back over.
If you Google for JavaScript array methods,
Yeah.
the first probably 2 or 3 links will, W3 schools is almost always the first link. And I typically
So
just
this is the one
add
I
the
used,
first one.
exactly. This is what I was looking at.
Which is
And they were talking about length.
splice, sort, very slow, joining, slicing, and the complete array reference. Yeah, the complete array reference is going to have what you want. Push adds new elements to the end of the array, and shift removes the first, so it's unshift. I always get that mixed up. Unshift adds a new element to the,
So then the other thing is, when I was using this, I thought, am I understanding it right? Because then I also wasn't sure that I was doing it right. Because I'm putting in the parentheses, I'm putting the name of the new thing I want to put in. Is that true?
Yes.
These are the parentheses, right?
Yeah.
Then how do I tie it to the array itself? I just use that
Great
variable
question.
name.
Oh, oops.
And then I just have to look at the solution and figure out.
It's so you have a var array, or arrays are really one, R equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then if you want to add it to the, what do you want to add? Add it to the beginning? So it would be r dot unshift. Let's add 0. And then console log r.
I think I did it right, except I just used the wrong.
So if I run this, it should give me 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Yeah, it was close. That was the crap. Then I was running out of time and I was losing my mind.
It's all right.
It's the little things, you know?
So have you all looked at the, I can say you all and I'm not lying this time. That's great. Have you all looked at the assignments for
For this week?
this week?
No.
Because I have only glanced at them. No? When did they do?
On Monday night?
Monday night? So let's take a quick look at them, just so we can at least read through them. How do I get to them? I don't think I can get them through assignments. I think I have to go through modules, but
It would actually be helpful if the assignments is sorted in the other direction, because as you get further in the semester, you just keep having to scroll down.
Yeah.
This is like a canvas.
I would agree with that. I'm not. What week are we? Week 5? So it would be these 2 assignments? So you're doing oh, that's what I'm, okay, that's what I was planning on doing today. Okay, good. A log message function. Input validation. Okay. Let's take a look at that fiddle. All right, what's the other assignment? How do I get to the other assignment? I'm always thrown off by the resolution of this. So this is a functions to reduce repetitive code. Calculating the average of the values in each of the 3 rows. Okay. So you're given the rows and you need to get the values of each of those 3, add them together, divide them by 3, and then throw them into the row average. Okay. Are there any other questions before I get started on what I plan to do today? Okay. You can be really quiet and then.
So when he was going through the lessons, he was talking about how when the function didn't have to be, if I understood this correctly, it didn't matter where it was placed, as long as it was within the document. I'm just wondering if it has performance, depending on the placement of how you break the different functions.
No, I think he's talking about the way it's, what's the word? No, all the functions get kind of pulled to the top of the document, and then they get run.
He said the expression function needed to be evaluated first before it could be used, but the others could be anywhere. So,
If you were to declare it as a function, it could be anywhere. But if it was assigned to a variable, it had to be you had to be aware of the order that it was declared.
So if it was like this, it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
But if it was like this, it had to be in a particular place.
but if it's like that top one,
Yep.
does it matter where it is in the document as far as getting a performance hit?
No, there's no performance issue with that. I mean, well, besides the fact that this is, I would recommend you never do it this way, just because this declares the function globally, and you don't really want to do that all the time. It's better to always have it as assigned to a variable and use it that way. I don't know if he said that or not. He may not have. Anyway, so we were gonna. I probably could have made this a little bit easier to follow. So I have an input, a text input right here, and followed by a button with an ID of my button, text of click me, a breaking space, which goes to the next line. Then I have a div with a class of border with an ID of output that is empty. Then I have a heading 3 with functions, and you can see the rest is just text. A heading 3, a heading 4, an unordered list with 3 list items. And I just sort of put what I was going to go over today in this. Over here in the CSS, I have one class that I always do called hide. That just, I always find it easier to do a hide class than to do something like style equals display none. I always feel like having a class declared off the bat. This is just a super common thing to do, so it always makes sense to have that somewhere. And I did a border of solid blue, which doesn't really appear to be working, but we can figure that out later. And I've got 4 empty functions here that I'm going to start with. I wanted to show the difference between these two. Just, we'll get to why this is better, but I want to just say that this is it's a best practice sort of thing. It probably won't affect anything in this class, but if you're going to be doing this, you want to probably be declaring it with the var. Has he gone over why we use var?
Why we use it, it's a variable,
Right, but I mean, we could do my variable equals 10, and that's valid.
Oh, it is, but it has that, I think
It's an allowable variable. Global variable. You guys talk about that.
He does? Okay. That makes it global, and that's the same reason that you don't want to declare functions as function log message, because when it's global, that means that it's taking up extra memory, and it's not cleaning up after itself when you're outside of a function. It's going to stay around forever.
I wonder if that, and I don't know if it's maybe it's particular to JavaScript, because my background's a little bit more like sort of PHP side of thing, that you'd want the functions to be, since you'd be reusing the code regularly, or is it because JavaScript is so tied to
You don't
each page
always,
code?
like I said, for this class, it won't make a difference for you. But as things get more complicated, you don't want functions to be available everywhere.
Mhm.
You might want I can't think of one right now. You might want like a print function to do something differently in one context versus another context, and you don't want them to conflict with each other. Or if you're including, let's say, a library like jQuery, you don't want to end up overwriting something. You don't want that to overwrite anything that you're doing.
So is even and is odd, aren't they like, aren't they functions themselves, or?
No. I don't think so.
Or something like functions, properties maybe?
No. No. Let's find out.
For some reason, I'm not sure.
I've never heard of that. No. No. This is somebody declaring it. All right, so for log message, what I'm going to do is output to the console as well as, let me kill this and this.
Are there classes?
Yes, but we're not going to do that tonight.
No,
That's-
I'm just curious. Like,
It's different because a function is a class, and that'll become more clear later. Not something I'm prepared to really talk about tonight.
That just sounds like a teaser.
Sorry.
well, you have-
Well, you've got a book.
I think in the book it gave the example where the function can call itself. That is
Yeah, I'll do that down at the bottom of this also. So log message, I want this to output to the console log as well as the that little output area that I had over here. I think this is like part of one of your assignments also, just to do that much. So now if I call log message something, open up the console log, clear it, make it smaller, if I can. Can I? Come on. There it is. All right. So if I run that, then it processes log message, which at this point it's going into this function. Log message, it's making MSG equal to something, the string, and then it's calling console log on MSG, the variable.
I'm not sure I understand. So what's the comments at the top when you put creating and then
That's just for my
notes? All right.
my notes.
So then you're creating a function which is like a container that you're going to call log message. Is that the deal?
I'm creating this function that I then use here.
You're creating a function. So
I'm defining the
you're
function here.
declaring a function, and then is log message actually a function name, or is that something?
Well, log message, I've named the function log message here, and then I'm using it here. With this,
Yeah.
this is the parameter that it's expecting. This function is expecting one parameter, which is a variable MSG.
Where are you declaring the variable?
It gets declared there.
That's how you declare it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so you function log message, and you're just calling it that, and then when you say console.log, you're going to log whatever that variable is. Is the deal, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then how does MSG turn into something when you put a log message down?
Right here, I'm calling the log message function, and I'm sending it this as a parameter.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the first parameter, it knows to put it in this variable. And then this gets called with that. But let's fix this while I'm at it. We'll do it that way. And you'll see that makes no difference to what it does. So,
So now every time you use that function log message, the function name log message, or the variable name log message, it will input something in the parentheses, it will spit that out as that.
and let's say I want to also have log message put it on the display over here. So I have a div called with an ID of output over here with nothing in it currently. This is getting too long.
So I've never been really clear on what inner HTML is. Is that because you're grabbing the ID from the HTML code that you have?
This is the element. This right here, document.getElement by ID output, that much, is referring to this div right here. And then inner HTML refers to anything within here, within the two tags.
Oh, for that div.
For that div, yeah. So you can use it on either side. You could get the inner HTML by saying var my inner HTML equals this. Or you can set the inner HTML like I am in this log message function. Oh, you're kidding me. It's not going up any
So,
further.
but you're setting it there because why? MSG. Okay, you lost me.
It's not going up. Oh, I lost real estate. I lost you? Where did I lose
Yeah,
you?
because why is it now equal to MSG? Or because you want it to be to go out into the to show. MSG.
Because I wanted it to show up over here. I wanted log message to do both the console log and to the screen.
Can you please show the HTML again? We put that in.
Which, the div?
Yeah. So I was expecting that to show up in a box.
Yeah, me too. I didn't want to have to debug that, but fine, I will. Yeah, that should be a blue box. I'm not sure what I did to break that.
That ER, don't you need a backslash even though it's the only one? I thought when you just use one of them, you still needed a slash.
That's a great question. You only need that. It only needs to be declared like a what's called a singleton, like this. You mean? Is that?
Yeah, that one. That's what I did.
Or do you mean like? Because
No,
it doesn't have a
yeah,
closing.
You need to open it for that, right? But for the when you just use one, don't you need the slash after?
You do when the document is an XHTML document. You don't if it's a HTML or HTML5 document.
Would it be in the box if we did get one by ID input text in HTML?
It would be in this. Yeah, it would be in this box. But there should be a border. I declared a border over here. And I don't know why it's not showing up. So I'm going to inspect elements, which is awesome on this resolution. Yeah. So it looks like this doesn't have a class. Oh, I know, because I broke it down at the bottom and I wanted to do that as an exercise later. But I could unbreak it here. I actually did do that on purpose, but yeah. So now it's in a little border. That's all. So let's do an is-even, which I believe is kind of part of some assignment that you have at some point. Do you know how to do that? It uses, as my comment says, uses the modulus operator. Have you heard of that? The modulus operator is like dividing something and then it returns the remainder of what's divided. So if num modulus 2 is equal to 0, return true. Else return false. So if I say log message is even that number, then it should give me, if I actually run it, true. If I change it to a number that's clearly odd, then false. Does that make sense?
So the modulus is, it's about remainder, I thought, but it looks like they're just dividing by 2. But if it's divisible
Yeah,
by
I
2,
mean,
it's true.
modulus, you're only ever going to use it with 2.
Oh, is it true?
It's just,
Oh, interesting.
you're never going to find, it would be very difficult to find a case where you're not using modulus with 2. Because you're almost always looking for if it's even
So
or
why
odd.
just using a division sign? Why just...
Because that wouldn't give me, that wouldn't let me know if it's even or odd. That would just divide it.
But if it's divisible by 2, then it would be equal.
Well, how would you know it was divisible by 2? You'd have to do some kind of check.
Numbers are divisible by 2 too, they just have remainders.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to do an is odd function, but I'm going to use is even to determine if it's odd. So any idea how I would do that? Without using modulus. I want to have an odd function that returns true if it's odd and false if it's even.
Is even 1.
If is even, then
True. I mean, sorry, false. Okay.
that's right.
So wait a minute now. You have, because you already set up the variable at the top.
Which?
Is even? Is that
For
right?
is even, yeah. Because is even is already,
So you are using
a function.
modulus too. You're just not using it. Right?
Yeah.
Because you already
Yeah,
set
I
it up.
am. It is actually using modulus. It's just not using it within this function explicitly. Yep.
Does the order in this particular case matter? Or does it have to, if you had put this bottom one on the top?
That is a great question. Let's find out.
It's not clear when things are picked out, but does it mean the whole model?
But then
matter
you
then?
If you switched it, then you wouldn't have defined is even, and so you wouldn't be able to use it because you haven't defined it.
Well, that's my guess as well, but it seems like some things are evaluated when it's originally wrong, and then some things are not, and I'm not clear about as well. I don't really know if that's true or not.
So, you think this will work or won't work?
Well,
It does.
so it
It
picks
does work.
everything up and it goes through it all.
Because it's not actually doing this. It's not actually doing this even. It's not until
Because it's calling it.
until the call itself.
I see.
All right, thank you.
So if you put the is even after the log message, that might fail. Maybe. Probably. Maybe. I'm not sure. That fails. Yeah. Because you're making the call before it's declared.
So it's processing and figuring out what the definitions are of the variables, and then you log the message. So it doesn't matter which order it goes. So it's
Yeah.
language.
It's determining what it needs to do for this function, but it's not actually running the function. So it's not going to fail. And then it determines what it needs to do for this, but it's not actually going to run it. And then it runs it here.
So is there a best practice though to of how you set it up, or like would it be smarter to define as even first if you were going to use it later, so that in case you
Yeah,
Very
you
broad,
probably want to be defining your functions first.
Because it makes it more readable.
Yeah. Right. Get even sum. Now this one is going to be based on this down here. So we're going to go on this.
Creating a small site, would you be creating, say, one JS file which has your functions in it, and then like others for each page, or how is it generally structured when you're creating?
How do you mean?
Like, say we're doing a small site, I'm just wondering in terms of, because obviously as you say you want to avoid repetition or having global functions, and if you want to make sure that they're declared before you're actually using them, if you're going to be reusing different functions on different pages of your site, would you kind of have a central area where you're putting your functions, and then
You would want to have functions that are doing similar things in the same files.
okay, so you
Functions
organize it
that
more by type of execution rather than
you organize it by what it's doing rather than where it's being used.
okay.
And you make separate files.
Yeah, for the most part. All right, so I've got a loop here. I've got an array, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have a variable even sum, which is set to 0. And I'm looping, I'm going through this array, which we did a little bit last week. And at each point, at each element of the array, it's checking to see if it's even. And if it's even, it's adding it to even sum. Are you familiar with the plus equals? What plus equals does?
I never read about it.
Let's say we have var a equals 1, var b equals 4, var c equals 7. If we have a var d that adds two things together, it would just be a plus b, right? But if we want to add c to d now, we could do d equals d plus c, or we could do d plus equals c, and that does the same thing as that.
It's the same thing, so why would you use one instead of the other?
This, I think, is more clear most of the time, that you're just adding c to d. This, it's repeating the variable, which could be confusing if you're not expecting it. And if you're just adding 1, you can do that shorthand. If you're just subtracting 1, you can use that shorthand, which is the same for lots of languages.
You said it again.
If you're adding something to D, you can use that, plus equals. If you're just adding 1 to D, adding like, so this is the same as D plus equals 1.
So literally, 1.
Yeah, 1, yeah. Actually, I'm not even sure if minus equals is a real thing. It might be plus equals minus 1.
Use this to what would you use it?
Yeah, iterating. I mean, we use the plus plus right here, right? In the for loop. We could just as easily say plus equals 1 there, or equals I plus 1.
So this plus thing confused me too, because I thought it was I plus. With iterate would give you like plus 1, but it's plus plus.
It's plus plus, yeah.
I never explained this because
Because I plus would confuse the JavaScript processor. It would be expecting another number. It would be expecting something to be there.
oh, okay, so plus plus.
So plus plus is
you add one.
unambiguous.
And then when you put the plus before it, there's a reason why you don't do that usually, right? Because you can put the plus before to add to, right?
Like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it matters for the for loop, but
You did explain that.
I can't think of a case where that actually matters. What happens is when it's plus plus d, that happens immediately. When it's d plus plus, it doesn't happen until the next line.
Oh, that was what it was, that it would be, that you'd get D the first time, and then you'd get D plus 1 if you put it after this.
Yeah. So if you do this, then maybe you'll end up starting with 1 because it'll increment it immediately. I haven't seen people do plus plus something in a long time, so I don't know if people still actually do that. They might. So what do I have? I have if the element of the array is even, then I add it to the even sum. Now what I wanted to do was turn this into two functions. So we know we can already use the isEven function, right? If isEven that array element. But let's make a function for the loop. I always forget JS Fiddle is not an IDE. It does not deal with tabbing very well. Alright, so get even sum. It's passing in a num array. But that's not what we named that's not what we have our array named. So we would have to change this to num array, this to num array, this to num array. Or change this to R.
So that R is just a variable that you made.
Right.
Right? Okay. And number is the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's the same as doing, don't quote me on this, but I think it's the same as doing R equals argument 0, I think. But it is declaring it as a var within the function. And I think at some point we'll have to use this arguments. Every function has a default arguments variable that holds all of the arguments that were sent to it. So even though we just have one declared here, if we did a get even sum of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it would fill up that arguments array. I think it's arguments. I'm not going to test that because we're not going over that right now. So we've got a get even sum function, which we're passing an array to. We're running through that array. We're checking to see if it's an even sum. But even sum doesn't exist, so we need to actually declare the even sum variable here. And then,
So you're setting the even sum variable to 0. And
Yes.
then you're saying for the variable I, which is, I'm not following that.
this is one way to run through an array.
Yeah.
It might not be the easiest one to follow. So let's do it a different way. Let's do a for index in R. Oops. This is how I would usually run through an array. I would use a for in, which is a little bit, might be a little bit more understandable.
So what's index then?
Index is the index of the array. So we have this array, which we're declaring down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? This is our array. R0, the 0th index, the first index, is equal to 1. Yeah, and then the first R1 is equal to 2. R2 is equal to 3.
Mm-hmm.
So index is that index number as you're running through it.
Right, so you can call it index, right?
Yeah, I just called it index here. I could have easily just called it I.
Oh, okay. So you could call it any variable then?
Right, you're naming that variable right here.
You mean, how does it connect to the array?
This for in
Yeah.
runs through every element of the array. And then on each iteration, it increments this.
Okay. Because you told it to
It's not incrementing. It's going through each element. So
because it's using a variable
It's getting the
that says
key of
I'll
each.
enter the entire array, and regardless of which number place it is, and I'll get all. Because there's a variable, right?
no. It's just running through every element of the array. It goes through, in order, all of the elements of the array. And this is the index of that.
Are you able to access the value directly without like doing a like R as?
No, that's just a PHP thing. I wish that, yeah. Usually what I'll end up doing is something like var value equals, just throwing that in. And then you could say value, oops. So I don't know which makes more sense, the for in or the for.
Well, that is what I think he was doing in the.
This is probably what he was doing, yeah.
Right. So in that one, you're saying for the variable I. Oh, right. For the variable I.
You're setting the first index as 0.
Yeah.
And then as long as the indices are less than the array length, You want to increment that index every time.
Oh, all right, I get it.
And then
So
as soon as that index reaches that length, it stops.
Because if you didn't have it in there, it would keep looping through, is that it?
If you tried to loop past the length, it would throw an error.
Does the second one be less, like, I mean, obviously in the scale, it probably doesn't matter,
It's really close. I know what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, yeah. This one is going to be very slightly faster. We'll stick with that one. So what am I missing here? I'm getting the even sum. I'm sending it the array. I'm setting even sum to 0. I'm incrementing, or adding to even sum every time there's an even value. What's this function missing? What should I have at the end of this function? What am I returning? So now, instead of this, we could just say, what did I call that? Get even sum, okay. And then that should give me, is that right? 2 plus 4 plus 6 is 12?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah. So you can see kind of what I was getting at, why we wanted to put that in there, because when you're running through the code and you see that, that's a lot easier to understand than what we had earlier. Just if you're looking at that, you might say, "Oh my God, what's this person doing?" But if you have a nicely named function, that it's easy to see what we're doing, and you can at least say, "Oh, I'm getting the even sum." Okay, and then I know that this is going to be getting the even sum. You can also do that with comments, but this is a better way to do that. All right, did I? Okay, so scope. This is the fun one. So, as I said earlier, if you don't put the var on it, it becomes a global variable, and it can be used anywhere that, as long as this instance of JavaScript is running. Doing var right here, there's really no difference to doing that and var right here, because right here I'm not in a function. It only matters when you're in a function. It's not like, I don't know of any other language that does it like this. Every other language will do something like, if you have an if something and you do a var, then that var will only be available within that if, in that block. But in JavaScript, that's not the case. In JavaScript, it only matters when you put it in a function. So I want to run through some of these, and I have a bunch of functions in a row, and I want you to tell me what k is at the end of each function. So we're starting out k equals Harvard. We have a function that takes in a word, it sets that word to Yale, and it returns that word. So if I say k equals my function anything, what is k? Right? No. No.
Yeah.
Because word equals you. Okay.
It's what the
Word equals you.
function,
Okay.
Because it doesn't matter what you send to this function, it's going to be setting word
Oh,
to Yale.
so, but then isn't it two different functions?
There's only one function going. There's only one function here, and it's my func.
Okay. So wait a minute. Now you set the variable k to equal Harvard.
Mhm.
And then you set the variable my func to equal the function of the word. So
Yeah, just follow the variable. Ignore the function off the bat.
okay.
We've got variable k equals Harvard.
Mhm.
Ignore this. K equals my function anything. So it's sending anything to my function and assigning it to k. So Harvard no longer matters. It's whatever my function returns. So we've got anything as word. Word is being overwritten by Yale here. And it's returning word.
So I don't get how, I'm not following because I'm seeing that you're setting my func to equal function of word, right? That variable word.
Yeah.
And then you're setting k is my function, which would be
Immediately I'm
my func, which would be function of the word name. So I mean, why wouldn't it be?
anything? Because when anything is sent to here, word is anything, right?
Yeah.
So right here, word equals anything.
Yeah. And then you change.
But then right here, we're changing word. So right here, word equals Yale. And then we're returning word, which is currently equal to Yale. And then we're setting that. We're setting k to that. I think this is the most confusing one. The rest are not as confusing.
So, in this particular case, is it because of the order? I'm missing why, I don't see the brackets are put together. Why is K, it's starting off as Harvard, and then then we're just redeclaring it as my function, or my function?
Yeah.
So it's, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So it stays my func until somebody else declares K as somebody else. Okay, so if we had something after this, it would be the next thing. Literally reading it in this particular instance.
So can you run through the code line by line and show us what happens with everyone?
Okay.
Like do a few step through it. And because I'll tell you what's confusing is that the way I read it, I don't know how it would be anything that hurry up because it hasn't seen that yet. And so, I mean, why then would you think?
I can put this after and it won't make any difference.
And this is the part that's confusing me, right? So why does it not make any difference if it's after? Because aren't we just redeclaring it at that point?
Because we're not running the function until we're down here.
I see, all right.
The my function stuff doesn't get executed until you actually call it
Yeah.
at the bottom.
Right.
So what's happening is the first thing it's doing is finding Harvard, then it goes to the next line down there, and it calls the function. That's the only, then it goes back up.
Yeah.
Runs through all of that. Whatever is returned gets assigned to K on that line. So it knows that my func function is there and it's available, but it doesn't actually do anything with it until you call it.
So when you call it, you're calling it and saying K is, now run that function.
K is whatever is returned by my func.
K equals to run that function and whatever comes back from it with the variable we're passing in,
Yeah.
that's what K is now.
So then when you're calling the function, you're putting anything in the bracket because you're telling it that's the word that you're going to use, that is the word at the moment. And that's what turns word into anything.
Yeah, word is anything here.
Then you define that word is yeah.
and then we're redefining
Yeah.
word here, which it should probably have a var, but doesn't. So because let's say because I did this, if what is word out here?
It's yeah.
It's Yale.
Oh, because it's global.
Because this is global. If I had put a var here, because that's inside of a function, this would be undefined. Undefined.
But after the function runs, then it's going to be yeah. Right?
No, it never leaves the function. Because it's declared as a var here, it never gets out of this function. You can never find what word is. You can only get what my function is. My function is returning word, but the variable word never leaves my func.
It lives within brackets.
Yeah. That's the difference between a local and a global variable. And that's why you should always put var in front of things. Next one? Next one's easier, I think. How much time do I have? No time. I'm out of time. Darn it. We'll do 2 more. Real quick. So var k equals 10. My func 2 takes a function of num, sets k equal to 11. K equals my func k. What is k?
How could it k equal? How could k equal something else that includes itself?
How could what?
K equals. Oh, I see. Yeah.
K equals 10. So before this, k equals 10. So inside of this, num equals 10, right? Because I'm sending k into my function as num. And then I'm setting k equal to 11, right? Wait, did I have other stuff up here? Yeah, I did. Let me quickly comment.
So I'm not sure I understand that last one because when you run the function, so I understand why k is 10 when you go return function. When you say k is equal to my function times k, it would be what?
So k is going to get the value that my func2 returns.
Yeah.
So what is my func2 returning?
So I'm not sure.
My func2 has no return. It's not returning anything.
Yeah.
So k is getting nothing. So it gets undefined.
It's returning nothing because what?
Because there's no return func. There's no return. I didn't say return k. I didn't say anything here.
But you're setting it. So like.
But I'm resetting it. That's what I'm doing right here. I'm setting k equal to the return value of my func2. You can ignore that we're sending it k. Just what is the return value of my func2? It's not returning anything, so it gets a value of undefined.
So you'd have to have return. You can't just figure it out. You have to also return.
You don't always have to have a return in a function. Like this log message. This doesn't have a return.
Mm-hmm.
But it does something, right? So If you tried to get the return value of log message, it would be undefined. It depends on what your function is trying to do.
If you deleted the var and the -2, would you get an error if it's trying to declare a global value over a local variable?
If I did what?
So you've already declared k outside. If you deleted the var inside the function, would it cause an error because it's trying to declare a global?
If I deleted it like commented it, or if I deleted it like...
Just deleted the var part, and you tried to declare k in there globally.
Well, then it wouldn't be a declaration, would it? It would be reassigning it.
Assignation, but because you've already declared the variable outside, I'm just wondering if there would be a conflict because
No, it wouldn't. Well, what's interesting is that k would, if I say, yeah, k is equal to 11 here, but outside it's still equal to 10 because that variable never came outside. This is overwriting the global variable k, but only locally. So it still exists in the global scope as this k. But this one didn't touch the global scope, it only touched the local scope.
okay, and if we took out the var from in front of both of them, we would be overwriting it outside the function too, right?
Then you would end, if you took out the var there, then it would end up, you would end up with 11 outside, yeah. Alright, I'm way over. And are there any other questions before I sign off? Or do you want to ask your questions after I stop recording?
The secret question.
Secret questions, okay.
Anybody who's watching, we're gonna write a book and sell it. Secret question.